Brendan, very good afternoon to you. What are your thoughts on what happened outside Parliament last night?
I think they were just shocking and horrible images to look at. In a democracy, it entirely is based on politicians being able to express their opinions freely and people being able to express their opinions freely. And as soon as you end up having to have police fighting off protesters, stopping attacks on people, it changes and undermines the basis for our democracy. So it absolutely has huge impacts on those people who experience it, and that is a true cross-party. I know that for Jacob Rees-Mogg, for Michael Gove, others that have been harangued or assaulted by protesters or thugs in the last period, it's that same impact. But the more profound impact is on our democracy. If we continue to have this level of intimidation, both online and on the street, it will mean that the political debate gets curtailed. It will mean that people are less likely to go into politics. The only people that will go in will be those who are so fanatical about politics that they don't really represent the public very well.
Do you think there is a connection, as some have drawn, between what the Prime Minister said last Monday in the Commons around Jimmy Savile and what happened last night? Or, as others seem to be suggesting, that actually this was a separate protest and they were shouting all sorts of things at the leader of the opposition?
The people who were responsible for the intimidation yesterday were those who carried it out, and I've always been very clear about that you have to keep that primary responsibility on the people who do those things. And I think it's too simple, particularly as you've been talking about in your programme, the fact that other MPs have been harangued and indeed reporters have been harangued by similar groups suggests it's not particularly targeted or strategic. The people that are generally engaging on this are sort of selfie stick waving obsessives who are just desperate to get themselves some coverage on social media. So I don't think we should overanalyze it. However, I do think there is a particular responsibility that comes with being the Prime Minister, and that if you take a far-right meme and you take that into the mainstream, if you accuse people, as he did in his initial words, of almost sort of trying to protect or certainly to ignore the actions of a paedophile, that creates understandable anger, fury, and that fury can tip over in some people into intimidation and violence. So I don't think for a second that the Prime Minister would have meant to do that, to whip up violence and intimidation. But when you're the Prime Minister, those words you use really matter, and I do hope the Prime Minister will be more careful in future about what words he uses.
And just finally, Brendan, where do you think our politics is at the moment in terms of the debates? Many have made comparisons with, the United States in the last 24 hours or so. Yet others would say, this is part of the cut and thrust of politics. In fact, it's been part of our democracy for a long period of time, in which people hold kind of strident views, and sometimes that tips over into what we saw last night, that we should get a sense of perspective on all of this. Where do you stand on that side of the debate?
I think we're in a very different place than the US. I worry a lot about the US at the moment, the Capitol attack, where, the equivalent of that would be the sort of storming of Parliament and MPs and people being shot outside the doors of Parliament. So I think we're in a very different place than that. I'm much more positive about the UK. I think people remain very committed to democracy in the UK. You don't have what you have in the US, which is the Republican Party essentially moving to either an antagonistic or certainly a not supportive view of people voting and of democracy. So I don't think we're in that position. I do, however, think that there are undercurrents out there which are very marginal at the moment, which are toxic and which do poison the well of politics, and that mainstream politicians, if we're to keep the healthy democratic culture which has characterised our country for so long, if we're to keep that and to build on that, then mainstream politicians have an absolute responsibility not to put this fanatical, those fanatics who are outside shouting everything from 5G to anti-vax to whatever it is. We need to keep those voices where they belong, on the outside, in the margins, and make sure the political debates that we have in this country are both respectful and passionate, and about the issues that we want to see change on.